When we think about China's relations with the Middle East, we usually picture big Chinese companies arriving in the desert. Huawei putting up antennas, Sinopec building pipelines, Costco taking over ports. But more and more often, that image is flipping like in a mirror. Because it's no longer just China moving into Arabia. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the Emirates are also pushing ever more boldly into China. This is a new story. A story in which it isn't only Chinese engineers working in Dubai or Riyadh, but also Arab billions flowing into Beijing and Shanghai. A world in which you can see Qatar Airways ads on the streets of Guangzhou, and in Liaoning petrochemical complexes are rising, built jointly with Saudi Aramco. A world in which gas from Qatar flows to Chinese power plants, and the Emirates' luxury lifestyle fits perfectly with the tastes of China's middle class. The biggest protagonist of this story is, of course, Saudi Aramco, a giant larger than ExxonMobil and BP combined, a company that is not only the heart of Saudi Arabia, but also one of the main pillars of China's energy system. When people in China talk about energy security, one name always appears: Aramco. It is the company that supplies oil, signs contracts for decades, and builds refineries in the People's Republic that transform local industrial landscapes. But Aramco is not alone. Qatar is investing in LNG and signing record 27-year contracts, longer than many political alliances. The United Arab Emirates are exporting their airlines, port know-how, and investment capital. Dubai is becoming a gateway between Beijing and Africa, and Abu Dhabi is building financial ties that make the Chinese market a natural field of expansion for Arab funds. This reversal of roles is something remarkable. Just 20 years ago, the Middle East looked at China as a distant customer, a buyer of barrels and gas. Today, it is a partner that Arab firms go to directly, investing, building, and putting down roots in its market. This is no longer just trade, it is interdependence. And for the world, that means one thing: if oil and gas are the blood of the modern economy, then the network of arteries and veins no longer runs only between Riyadh and Washington. More and more often, its main artery leads straight to Beijing. This is the story of how companies from the desert found their place in the heart of the Middle Kingdom, of how Aramco, Qatar Energy, Emirates, and Arab investment funds are rewriting the map of global trade, and of how, when we look at China-Middle East relations today, we can no longer talk only about Chinese expansion. We have to talk about mutual entanglement, about an Arab dragon slipping straight into the Chinese market. If you had to point to one company that best embodies Saudi Arabia, the answer would be simple: Saudi Aramco. It is not just an oil company. It is a pillar of the state, the heart of the economy, and a symbol of national pride. But for China, Aramco is something even greater. It is a guarantee that the massive engine of Chinese industry will not stop for even a single day. Relations between Aramco and China began modestly, with shipments of oil barrels in the 1990s. But as the Chinese economy grew at breakneck speed, demand for energy exploded. China needed more, faster, and more reliably. And Saudi Arabia, seeing its chance, decided to bind itself to Beijing with contracts measured not in years but in decades. Today, Aramco is the largest oil supplier to China. Each year, hundreds of millions of barrels flow there. Tankers leave the port of Ras Tanura, and after a few weeks dock in Ningbo, Qingdao, or Tianjin. This is not ordinary export. It is the bloodstream that connects the deserts of Arabia with factories in Guangzhou, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. But Aramco did not stop at selling barrels. It understood that if it wanted to be present in China for good, it had to go deeper, into industry and infrastructure. That's why it invests in refineries and petrochemical complexes. One of the most spectacular projects is the joint venture in Liaoning, where one of China's largest petrochemical plants has been built together with local conglomerate Norinco. Aramco not only supplies crude, it also co-creates facilities that turn oil into plastics, fuels, and chemicals. Cooperation with Sinopec, China's energy giant, is another pillar. Aramco and Sinopec sign contracts worth tens of billions of dollars. Together they build plants, develop technologies, and form a joint front in the global petrochemical industry. These are not short-term deals, but a strategic partnership designed to last generations. For China, Aramco is more than a supplier. It is a partner in energy security, one of the few that can guarantee stable deliveries regardless of global crises. U.S. sanctions on Iran, the war in Ukraine, instability in Africa. In this chaos, Aramco is the rock on which Beijing builds its certainty. For Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, China is the ideal customer. A growing economy, massive energy needs, and no moralizing political conditions. While Europe and the U.S. increasingly talk about moving away from oil, China still needs it, and in huge quantities. The Aramco-China relationship is a textbook case of interdependence. Saudi Arabia provides the raw material. China provides the market. Saudi invests in Chinese refineries. China invests in Saudi downstream projects. And although politically Riyadh balances between Washington and Beijing, the numbers are clear. For Aramco's future, the key market is no longer the United States, it is China. No wonder people say that in the 21st century, a barrel of oil has become the new strand of silk. Because when a tanker with the Aramco logo docks in a Chinese port, it is not just a routine commercial transaction. It is a piece of a global puzzle in which the Middle East and the Middle Kingdom intertwine their fates long before politicians announce new alliances. Saudi Aramco in China is not just a company exporting raw materials. It is the king of oil that has found its second kingdom, in the heart of the People's Republic. If Saudi Aramco is the king of oil, then Qatar Energy is the czar of gas. A tiny peninsula wedged between Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf has managed to build a giant empire thanks to a single resource: liquefied natural gas, LNG. And today, its biggest and most important customer is China. Qatar Energy and the Middle Kingdom are connected by more than simple trade. It is a strategic arrangement in which both sides get exactly what they need most. Beijing, stable energy supplies to power factories and heat millions of homes in northern provinces. Qatar, a huge reliable market that signs contracts not for 5 or 10, but for up to 27 years. In 2022, one of the biggest gas deals in history was signed. Qatar Energy and Sinopec agreed on LNG deliveries for 27 years, a record lifespan in the energy world. It was a signal that Qatar is not a seasonal partner for China, but a pillar of energy security for generations to come. And that's not all. Qatar doesn't just sell gas, it invests in terminals and infrastructure in China. Cooperation with Sinopec and CNPC, China National Petroleum Corporation, covers not only deliveries, but also joint petrochemical projects and LNG infrastructure development. This means Qatar's gas business in China is rooted not only in contracts, but also in concrete, pipelines, and steel tanks. For Beijing, it is an ideal deal. China is diversifying its gas supplies. It has pipelines from Russia, deals with Australia and the Middle East. But it is Qatar that gives it the longest guarantee of stability. Crucially, LNG can be shipped by tanker, making it less vulnerable to political risks associated with overland pipelines. For Qatar, it's a golden business as well. In a world where Europe proclaims it will move away from gas, and the U.S. wants to export its own LNG, Beijing is becoming the most loyal and important customer. Every tanker from Ras Laffan sailing to Chinese ports is not only another $1 billion for Qatar's budget, it is another brick in the construction of its political independence. In the background lies another aspect: soft power. Thanks to gas, Qatar has not only an economic position in China, but also a political one. It becomes a state whose voice cannot be ignored. When your country supplies a significant share of energy to its factories, your ambassador in Beijing speaks louder. Qatar Energy shows that even a tiny state can play a gigantic role in the global puzzle if it uses its resources wisely. And its contracts with China turn Qatari gas into more than just a commodity, into political currency. And just as Saudi Aramco has tied China to Saudi oil, Qatar Energy has tied it to Qatari gas for decades. As a result, in the 21st century, the heartbeat of the Arabian Peninsula can be heard in China's industrial zones as clearly as in Doha. Not oil, not gas, not steel. Sometimes it's the wings of airplanes that are the best symbol of globalization, and just as Huawei or Costco have become China's ambassadors in the Middle East, Arab Airlines, Emirates, Etihad, and Qatar Airways have become the Gulf's ambassadors in China. 30 years ago, a Chinese passenger flying to Europe or Africa had limited options. The journey was long, with layovers in Moscow, Bangkok, or Hong Kong. Then Dubai appeared on the scene. Emirates decided to build a global hub where every traveler, from New York to Sydney, could change planes in the very heart of the Middle East. And that strategy worked perfectly. Today, planes of Emirates and Qatar Airways take off daily from Beijing, Guangzhou, Shanghai, or Chengdu. On board are not only Chinese business travelers and tourists, but also cargo moving faster than Costco's ships. Arab Airlines have created an alternative route between China and the world, an air corridor where Dubai, Doha, and Abu Dhabi act as modern desert caravan leaders. But Arab airlines in China are not just about logistics. They are also about the soft power of luxury. As China's middle class grew, it wanted to experience the world on new terms, more comfortably, faster, with prestige. And this is where Emirates came onto the scene, with private first-class suites, spa lounges on the A380, and crew that turned the journey into an experience rather than mere transport. In the Chinese market, where local carriers for years were synonymous with simplicity and cost-cutting, Arab brands became windows onto a world of luxury. Social media filled with photos from private cabins, clips from onboard showers, and shots of drinks served 10,000 meters above ground. For many Chinese, Emirates or Qatar Airways became symbols of success, a ticket to a world where travel equals status. Behind this prestige lies harsh business reality. Arab airlines invest billions in relationships with Chinese airports. Dubai signs special agreements with Beijing and Shanghai to handle more flights. Qatar Airways enters joint ventures with Chinese carriers to strengthen its position. Etihad, though smaller, also tries to carve out niches in cargo and premium travel. And it's not just about passengers, it's also about trade. Cargo moved by Arab airlines links Chinese factories with Africa, Europe, and Latin America. In many cases, an Arab plane is faster and more reliable than a Costco ship or a freight train from Yiwu to Duisburg. In China, Arab airlines have built not only a market, but a brand image. They have become aspirational names, and their logos, part of Chinese dreams of travel and luxury. This is Arab luxury on Chinese skies, showing that soft power is not always built through culture or politics. Sometimes, it only takes a fleet of modern aircraft flying farther, faster, and better than the competition. And just as Huawei or Sinopec are changing the Middle East, Emirates and Qatar Airways are changing the way China connects with the world. They are not just airlines. They are an air bridge binding two worlds, the desert and the Middle Kingdom, into a single global network. On the map of global trade, ports are the hot spots of history. The Suez Canal, Singapore, Rotterdam, that's where the game for control over the flow of goods has always played out. And in the 21st century, one of the most important players in this game is Dubai. More precisely, its logistics giant DP World. For many, DP World is just an obscure name. In reality, it is one of the world's largest port operators, present on 6 continents in over 70 locations. It is the company that turned Dubai into more than just a city of skyscrapers and hotels. It turned it into a global trade hub through which commerce between Asia, Europe, and Africa flows. China noticed this quickly. If Huawei, Sinopec, or Costco were being sent to the Middle East, then in the other direction, DP World went into Asia, straight into the Middle Kingdom. The most symbolic point is Yiwu, the Dubai Silk Road project. Yiwu is a Chinese city famous for a giant wholesale market, dubbed the Factory of the World for small goods. DP World connected it with Dubai via a route that became part of the new Silk Road. Dubai began to serve as the world's transshipment hub, where goods from China were reloaded and sent onward to Africa, Europe, and South America. But DP World did not stop at a single project. In China, the company cooperates with Costco and local operators in managing terminals. Together, they handle containers that sail from Shanghai or Qingdao to Dubai, and then on to the more than 150 ports within DP World's network. For Beijing, DP World is a strategic partner. Thanks to Dubai, Chinese goods can reach African and Middle Eastern markets faster and more efficiently. For Dubai, in turn, China is a massive customer that fills the terminals of Jebel Ali and Dubai South. It is mutual reinforcement. China gains access to the world, Dubai becomes the world's gateway. It's worth remembering that DP World is not just ports. It is also digital logistics. The company invests in AI systems for transport management, in e-commerce and supply chains. Because of this, in China it is seen not just as a port company, but as a modern operator that understands 21st century needs. And this is where an interesting contrast appears. Costco, the Chinese port giant, takes over terminals in the Middle East. DP World, the Dubai giant, enters Asia and works with the Chinese on their own turf. It's like a chess game where both sides place their pieces on both halves of the board. For ordinary Chinese citizens, DP World is a name they probably have never heard. But for their online shops, for their deliveries, and for their trade, it is a firm without which many products would never arrive on time. And for the business world, it's a sign that the Middle East is no longer just a market that receives investment. It's also a player moving into the very heart of the Middle Kingdom. DP World in China shows that Arab companies can play on a global scale. Thanks to this giant, Dubai has not only opened its gates to Chinese goods, but has itself become the gateway to the world for China. Not every expansion has to look like a refinery, a port, or an LNG terminal. Sometimes influence is built more subtly, through food, lifestyle, financial investments, and culture. That is how the Gulf states and the broader Middle East are entering China, creating what we might call Arab soft power. The first and most visible element is halal food. China is home to tens of millions of Muslims, mainly Hui and Uyghurs, for whom halal is everyday life. But for the growing middle class in Shanghai, Beijing, or Guangzhou, halal is increasingly seen as a marker of quality and exoticism. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have started exporting not only meat and food products, but also entire halal certification standards. As a result, in Chinese supermarkets, next to French wines or Australian beef, you can find products with a halal logo from Dubai or Doha. The second pillar is investment funds. Qatar Investment Authority, QIA, Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, PIF, and Abu Dhabi's Mubadala are pouring billions into Chinese startups, real estate, and tech companies. For Arab states, this is a way to diversify their wealth. Instead of relying only on oil and gas, they want stakes in Chinese companies that may become global leaders. For China, it is a capital injection that strengthens local innovation. Another dimension is education and culture. In Chinese cities, Arab cultural centers are being established, film festivals from Dubai or Doha are organized, and universities are partnering with institutions in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi. The Emirates actively promote themselves as a place where Chinese students can study in English, surrounded by luxury and modernity, but with a strong Arab atmosphere. Religious tourism also matters. Every year, China increases the number of pilgrims sent for Hajj and Umrah. Saudi Arabia is preparing special programs for them, and the journey from Beijing or Guangzhou to Mecca becomes an experience that combines tradition with modernity. This makes the religious dimension of Sino-Arab relations increasingly important, even if it remains in the shadow of big oil and gas contracts. And finally, lifestyle. Dubai has become a dream destination for many Chinese. Luxury hotels, shopping malls, palm islands, and golden cars. This is an image that, in Chinese social media, has become synonymous with success. It is no coincidence Emirates and Etihad invest in advertising aimed at Chinese millennials. They see in the Emirates something that could be called an Arab Disneyland of luxury. This soft power works more subtly than tankers and gas contracts, but can be just as effective. A barrel of oil or a cubic meter of LNG go to a factory. Food, fashion, culture, and lifestyle go into people's hearts and minds. And in the long term, that can be an even stronger tool of influence. Arab soft power in China shows that interdependence doesn't end with resources and logistics. It is the story of how the Middle East enters the everyday lives of Chinese people, on the plate, in the wallet, and in the imagination, and that the new Silk Road is not only a route for goods, but also for symbols and ideas. Just over a decade ago, the relationship between the Middle East and China seemed simple. Desert kingdoms sold barrels of oil and gas, and Beijing paid and built its factories. Today, that story looks entirely different. It is no longer a one-way trade. It is an interdependence that weaves two distant civilizations into a single system. Saudi Aramco has become the heart of China's energy system. Barrels flow from Ras Tanura to Ningbo, and in Liaoning, joint refineries are being built that reshape the industrial landscape of the Middle Kingdom. Qatar Energy has signed 27-year gas contracts, longer than many political alliances, and thanks to LNG has turned Qatar into a state whose voice in Beijing is clearly heard. In the air, Arab Airlines, Emirates, Qatar Airways, Etihad have created a bridge linking China with Africa, Europe, and the Americas. From Shanghai, Beijing, and Guangzhou, their planes depart daily, and on board Chinese passengers experience a taste of luxury that has become the aspiration of the entire middle class. In ports and terminals, DP World, the Dubai giant, has woven its tentacles into China's logistics. Thanks to Dubai, goods from Yiwu, Shanghai, or Qingdao reach Africa and Europe faster. In Chinese supermarkets, Arab halal food is appearing more often. In startups, Arab investment funds, and in the imagination of the young Dubai image as a place where the future has already happened. The Middle East has ceased to be just the gas station of the world. It has become a player capable of building influence in the most powerful country of the 21st century. And it does so not only through barrels and cubic meters of gas, but also through culture, capital, and lifestyle. For China, Arab companies are more than contractors. They are partners who fill the gaps left by the West, offering resources, logistics, luxury, and exotic appeal. For the Middle East, China is a customer, a market, and an ally that does not ask about human rights or democracy. It pays and cooperates. Thus, a new system is emerging, a system in which the Middle East does not end at the deserts and ports of the Gulf, but reaches straight into the heart of the Middle Kingdom. A system in which a barrel of oil and an Emirates ticket become parts of the same story. And perhaps this is the biggest change of the 21st century, that in Beijing and Shanghai, the future of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the Emirates is present just as strongly as in Dubai or Riyadh. Because the Middle East is entering China today not as a guest, but as a co-host of the new world.